All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Happier, Healthier Arkansas podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Cam Daniels. Listen, you're here to talk about the amazing stories that we have, not only in the clinic, about making people happier and healthier. And so I have the absolute pleasure and privilege introducing not only a patient, but my good friend, Nicole. She's not only a patient here at the Specific Chiropractic Centers, but she's an advocate for what it is that we do because of her wonderful story. If there's anything that you get from this episode today, it's all about how you can literally go from not having any hope to having all the hope in the world, my friends. And so, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on Happier, Healthier Arkansas. What's going on?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. Introduction.
And so, for those that are listening, kind of talk about who you are, and then we'll get into the actual story.
Okay. Well, I'm Nicole Desiderio. I am a patient concierge with a Specific Chiropractic. I'm also a multiple business owner. I've had an autoimmune disease probably much longer than when I was diagnosed, but I was at an absolute rock bottom looking for answers, anything to make me feel better. And that's when I found a calling to go to a free workshop. And that's where I met Dr. Kim. And now here we are, like a year and some change later.
And, that's interesting because, I do host workshops in the clinic. And I want you to let the people know exactly what it was that you were talking about in the car before you actually came into the workshop. You told me multiple times, and I know they have to hear it. They have to hear it.
Yeah. So, being a multiple business owner, like I'm used to like going to workshops, going to presentations, things like that. So I'm pretty open to those kind of things. So the night before I went to your workshop, I was online, I think it was on Facebook, and I was like looking for answers about what can I do to improve my Hashimoto's symptoms and reduce them. And I found your workshop. Me and my boyfriend were like, yeah, we're going to go to this. So we came and pulled up at the clinic 5 minutes before it was time to go in. And I was having a conversation with my boyfriend because he's very much a yes man. He wants to say anything I do, he wants to do. And I didn't want to go into something because like, I don't have a problem with chiropractors, but I watched my parents just do the same thing over and over again and never find any real results. It was very, very temporary. Like it would last a day or two. So I was just like, look, Luke, we're not going in here and signing up for nothing. We're not buying a magical tool. We are literally just here to get some information about our health. So make sure that you sit on your hands, we raise them. We're not signing up for anything. And then went in, Dr. Kim and Dr. Chris put all the logic up on the screen, and I couldn't argue with that. So, and I love to argue, but couldn't argue with that. So I was the first one to raise my hand and sign up. And of course, Luke followed suit.
And, that's so fascinating because you first told me that. I mean, you're right, because a lot of people, just in general with a lot of things, will typically wait in order to make a decision. And a lot of times when they wait, it's way too late, right? I mean, we've known, a lot of the patients I take care of, typically their last stop shop, but who knows what it may have looked like, if I would have caught them 10 years ago or something like that. So let the people know. I mean, what's kind of your story? I've heard it obviously multiple times. I've walked you through the process of it, but kind of talk about your story with autoimmune Hashimoto's and exactly where you were when you first came into the clinic.
Okay. Well, it's a great question, and thank you. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism in 2020, but I had been experiencing the symptoms for decades. I didn't know that there was anything extra wrong with me other than like asthma. I just knew I didn't feel good. So I got diagnosed with that in 2020. I did everything that they said to do, and I was not seeing any difference. In fact, it just kept going downhill. It just kept getting worse. And when I walked in that clinic that day, at that time, I was working at like a natural food store, and I was working in the freezer. And one of the symptoms of Hashimoto's is not being able to regulate your body temperature. Like it's very hard to sweat, and it's in, like you're ice cold all the time. Your feet and your hands are cold all the time. So after, like, I didn't have to go into the freezer every day of the week. I was managing like a frozen dairy department. So I was literally in the freezer or the refrigerator all the time. I like left clothes there so I could literally pack on like 6 layers, because inside
Wow.
if you've ever been inside an industrial freezer before, they keep it at like -10.
It's cold. It's
You know,
cold.
I live in the South. It's cold. That's cold to me.
That's funny.
So, I literally showed up. I think I was wearing like a pair of sweatpants and a pair of like industrial, like double lined rubber boots
Right.
to come to your workshop. So, the like been experiencing hair loss. I would have like mystery rashes pretty much my whole life. I didn't really know anything different. So
So
that's kind of the spot I was at when I came to see you.
so it's kind of like, the process where it's like you had some solutions, but you tried all the solutions, but actually none of them actually produced the fruit, right? Now,
Mhm.
let's talk about across the board what people face. That's the skepticism. Okay.
Mhm.
What were some of the questions that you were asking yourself when you were listening to, what it is that Dr. Chris and I were saying during that workshop? Like what was kind of like the if any, I've actually never asked you this question before, but what was there any skepticism there? Was there any like, oh, these guys are full of it, or
I want to say yes and no.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't think that y'all were full of it. Um, you know, but I've always been more interested in functional or holistic medicine
Right.
than I've ever been interested in, like, Western conventional big pharma medicine. I do think it does help with a lot of different things, short-term life saving. But as far as finding the root cause, like when I was watching y'all do your presentation and put up all that logic on the screen, the one slide that really just got me was where it talks about how infants come out of the
Yeah.
womb, and that it was like what, like a crazy number, like 88% or 80% or something like
Yep.
that. I was just like, okay, so 80% of people walking around here just with like their head on crooked, you
Uh-huh.
know? So I was like, I wonder that if that's why I feel like I need to like pop my neck all the time. Like, I wonder if that's why, like, if I have a kink in my brainstem, I want to at least know,
Yeah.
because the things that I was doing, I was seeing some incremental results,
Yeah.
like with magnesium supplementation and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Like it helped immensely with my pain. Um, but that's just kind of what I was feeling when y'all were going through the motions of the slides and discussing with everybody.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing how there's a different there's a different approach towards everyone's initial interaction with us docs, and the
Mhm.
reason why is because most of the time people have been burned or people have been so involved in the Western civilization of medicine that this is so out of the box. And there's people like yourself, you're like you've already expressed some interest in it, you already know what's going on, so it's kind of like, you know, yeah, like this may work, but also this may be another thing that I try and it doesn't.
Mhm.
Let's talk about your care process, okay? Because you and I both know it's an absolutely beautiful thing. I mean, to take someone from one end all the way to the end of care is an absolutely fascinating process. And what do I say? I say, what are the two things? Show up and trust me. If people do that, we're going to see results at the end of the care. But let's talk about you as the patient's perspective, right? I know how I feel as a doctor. Let's talk about you as the patient's perspective, exactly what the process of care was like for you, the ebbs and flows of it. Okay, so let's talk through like the first half of care. So the first half of care, right? What's happening is there's a lot of different changes in your nervous systems. You're getting some results, you're not getting some results. But before you start the first half of care, there's got to be that first adjustment.
Oh, wow.
Let's talk about your very first adjustment. So we get set up. I find the misalignment. I take you in there. I explain what the care recommendations for you. I give you that first adjustment. Walk the people through what that is.
So the first adjustment, it like life-changing immediately. I can't speak for everybody's results and what they feel, but like what I experienced, I could take a deep breath for the first time in my life. That was wild to me. I didn't even know that I wasn't taking a full deep breath. Didn't even know. And I, for the first time, could feel literal warmth, a rush of warmth run into my hands and into my feet. Like I wasn't freezing cold. In fact, I told you, I'm like, no, I don't need that blanket.
Right.
So that was wild. And then like a couple days after that, I had to spend another day in the freezer. That was the first time in my life that the cold was ever even tolerable.
So you've really noticed the fact that, and you're absolutely correct, and I want to make sure that people hear this, every single person's first adjustment is different. Some people, they get adjusted, and what happens is, boom, breathing's better, I feel a lot better, I can run a marathon, I could, do all these different things. Some people, adjust, and sometimes things may flare up for a second, because sometimes things do get, I shouldn't say worse, but sometimes things do flare up before they get better. Most of the time when I give people that first adjustment, I give them that first adjustment and they're like, I don't know what just happened, but something's happening in a very good way. So it's nice to hear that. So now the first half of care, right, the ebbs and flows, where, we're going through, the flare-ups, and there's not so many flare-ups. But the second half of care, okay, what do you think it would take for someone to continue to commit to the process of care, right? So like how easy was it for you to do those two things, show up and trust me? And if it was easy, how did you make that easy? And if it was not easy, how did you continue to commit to that?
That's a really good question. Thank you. My best answer is I was at the point where I didn't have any other choice but to trust you.
Wow.
And it was like, all right, well, I'm in this now. So do I want my hair to stop falling out? Do I want my temperature to regulate? Do I want to breathe? Like, I had to ask myself those questions. Like, what is the alternative? We already know what the alternative is, and it's to go back to how I was feeling, and I don't want to do that. So it wasn't ever a thing. It wasn't ever a conversation in my mind or a thought in my mind that was just like, oh, I'm not going to trust Dr. Cam. It was, and what is the alternative?
Yeah. What made that switch, Nicole? I want to stop at that point real quick. What made that switch between I'm going to live like this the rest of my life and I refuse to live like this the rest of my life? Where did that switch come from?
That switch started coming on long ago, before I met you. I was vegan and vegetarian. I was completely pretty plant-based for over 10 years, and I still didn't see results. So I had been looking for answers without like understanding what was even wrong with me, because that was long before I got a diagnosis in 2020.
Right.
So there wasn't a particular switch when I met you. I had just had enough. And when you have had enough, you will do enough.
And the hardest people to manage, take care of, just across the board, The hardest people to manage are the people that identify with their diagnosis. What's wonderful for you throughout the entire care process, Nicole, is this. You have told yourself that I have Hashimoto's. I am not Hashimoto's. And that is like, I can work with that. And, people that come in here saying I have migraines or I suffer from migraines, I can deal with that. It's when people identify with their diagnosis so much to where they're like, I am migraines or I am Hashimoto's, that almost makes it extremely difficult to take, because there's a mental barrier there that we have to get across. And you never had that up. And that's why, if anyone listening to this, if you want to know how to get results super fast, it's to emulate exactly what Nicole's talking about, where it's like, she showed up, she trusted me, she had enough, she was unable to even comprehend what life would continue looking like this for the rest of her life, and she decided to take action. So end of care, now you're on wellness, you come in about once a month or every 3 weeks to get checked up. Talk to the people what that final visit looks like at the end of care, when we go over your reevaluation paper, or when we go over your new patient exam from when you first came in, and we see that all those little, checked boxes that you had in the beginning are now gone. What does that look like? What is that feeling?
The best way I can answer that is, I read this book called The Hashimoto's Protocol by Isabella Wentz. And she talks about in the book that when you have your health, you have 1,000 dreams. When you don't have your health, you have one dream. And when we're sitting there and we're going over the evaluation and we're talking about all of my improvements, like, the improvements haven't stopped. Like, I really feel like we should do another reevaluation. Right. Because to just track how much progress, for me, it didn't stop, and it's not going to. Like, right now, I'm in the middle of a flare up. That's why I'm not wearing makeup. That's not why I'm, doing my hair and those things. But I don't think it's fair to solely rely on your doctor. Your doctor is there to give you a blueprint. You got to build it yourself.
Yeah. Wow.
You got to be the contractor. You got to get the permits. You got to put your foundation in, and you got to do the work. It would be unfair of me to you, Dr. Cam, if I just solely leaned on you.
Yes, I agree.
So is there a lot of different factors with environmental factors, your lifestyle, and some other things that are completely out of control? Absolutely. But you have to take personal responsibility at least for 50% of it.
Yes.
If not more.
Yep. and you've seen it yourself, right? Let people know. People will come in, oh my goodness, Dr. Cam saved my life. He did this, he did that. And I tell people, look, this is halfway. Excuse me. I say, this is halfway. You know what I mean? I was just the conduit, the person that allowed the healing process to happen. But the blueprint and the stuff like that the patient follows, that also helps accelerate results. Nicole, for someone that's listening and you're like, if you want to give one piece of advice to someone who is listening, what would that be? It could be anything. It doesn't have to be regarding care, or it could literally be anything.
If you're listening and you're wondering if this could work for you, there's only one way to find out. Just go get scanned. The worst thing that can happen is that you make a new friend and you have a great 20-minute consultation. Right. Yep. That's the worst thing that can happen. I knew that I couldn't live the rest of my life without knowing. And this is an uncomfortable topic for some people, but it's just like, functional medicine doesn't particularly run on insurance, not most of y'all anyway, or whatever. Right. So, I look at it this way, and I look at it as this argument that I had with my father before he passed away, like 15 years ago. And we were talking about lifestyle change and how that would affect cardiovascular, any other condition that you may be experiencing. A lot of it has to do with lifestyle. I'm like, what is more important to you? Spending the extra $5 for a bag of organic apples, or going and spending $250,000 to put 5 stents in your heart?
Right.
So it was either I was going to chase my tail, or I was going to do something different that I hadn't done before and, make it work. So that's a personal question for anybody should ask themselves, of what is more important to you. Do you, say you have eczema, like, are you just going to keep putting a steroid cream on your arms the rest of your life? Or are you going to find out what is causing that issue? But you have to make the jump. You hear a lot of people talk about, especially in business atmospheres, about making the jump. How do you know if you never make the jump?
Right. And closing that separation as well of that jump, especially as you go to make it and realizing that it's actually not that far as you think. Nicole, the fact that you even came on here, full transparency for everyone watching this is the first patient testimonial type interview that we've ever done here at the Specific on this podcast. Nicole brought it up to me, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And so this was totally organized by Nicole. She was like, hey, I would love to get on it. I'm extremely grateful that she was even willing to be brave and get on here and tell her story, because it is a very successful story, and we get multiple successful stories like that. The key thing I want you guys to get from this podcast is A, sometimes it is just taking that leap. B, not everyone is a candidate for care. Okay, most people, they have a neurological issue going on, but not everyone is a candidate for care. There's so many other factors that go into being a candidate here at the Specific. This is not the type of revolving door chiropractic clinic. Our focus is getting the sick people well, and so in doing so, we do consultations like Nicole talked about. 20-minute consultation, completely complimentary. You come in, and I run a couple scans to be able to see exactly what's going on. Okay, is there something going on? Awesome. Then I have a solution. If is there not anything going on neurologically, then I look at where to refer you to. Listen, my friends, I'm not going to leave you out there to dry. Dr. Chris and Dr. Grant is not going to leave you out there to dry. We are on a mission to make Arkansas the happiest, healthiest community in existence. Okay, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on, my friend.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. If you guys want to learn more information, feel free to give us a call at 501-420-2815. And probably at the time of this podcast, we will have happierhealthierarkansas.com dialed in. But until then, you can go to the Specific Little Rock.com. Go ahead and submit your questions there, anything that you have. Let us know if you've subscribed to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up. If you're on podcasts, or if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, please leave a review. It really helps the algorithm to help push the message out there of keeping people happier and healthier in this wonderful natural state that we all call home. So God bless you, everyone. Nicole, thank you so much for coming on. Until next time, we'll see you.